Yes, we have a quorum, so I'll call a meeting to order. This is the Representative Town Meeting Rules Committee meeting. And the first item is to approve the minutes. Gary.
That's the reason why I asked the question to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. The only correction I have is, and I don't know whether it's a personal affront or not, but the only misspelled words in the last minutes were my name. And I don't know whether that's a message or something, but and may I ask that there be, and I don't know if Patty is an I or a Y.
It's I, but that happened to me one time when Joanne was taking notes and you weren't here, and I was like, oh.
So I'm
No,
just
it was
asking
the
that
bummer.
all the times that my name may appear on the last minutes, that you please just change in my circle. So I just thought I'd mention, and that's why I brought up the other one too. I don't know why I even looked at the agenda for the general meeting compared to the minutes we had from our meeting, and that's why I just noticed it too, and I wondered if they had to agree, and if they don't have to agree, we just forget it, that's all.
They have to.
They have to agree,
But if there was,
the shooter education was not, at least I don't recall it being voted in the meeting to put it on the agenda, the RTM.
You were gonna go back to
Yeah.
the police chief to
Right.
find out what he preferred
Oh,
to do.
that's fine, that's fine, but I'm still, so I'm,
Take it out.
Yes.
so I'm,
Exactly.
my initial question is,
Yeah.
should they agree? And the answer is yes, so I'm gonna ask that in the minutes of January, whatever the date was, that you take out 4B about shooter education for RTM members.
Right.
Okay, that was my
You could say was discussed.
you can say it
It
was
was
discussed, and there was going to, and Seth was going to follow up with whether or not it should
Future
be.
information.
Right.
Do that too if you care to.
But I'm even surprised it got that far, because why not tell the shooters? It would be the equivalent of telling the Germans what your D-Day plans were.
Now, the word that I got was that they would have a private presentations at the police station
That's
for
correct.
those who wanted to come.
That is correct.
That'd be the way it would be
Yes, it
done.
was never.
That's the way they would prefer to do it.
Yes.
It's not preferred.
No.
It is, they are
It was
not
more than
doing public meetings.
No, there was a discussion going into executive session
We,
after the regular meeting and executive session is what we
yeah, but then
discussed.
that means everybody has to clear
Right.
who's not part of the
I'm saying what the
RTM.
discussion at the last meeting was of
Yeah,
doing it in
yeah.
executive session or doing it in a private session.
Yeah, they want private.
Okay, so can I have a motion to accept the meeting, the minutes of the meeting with corrections? So, second, please. Okay, good. You got that? All in favor? There we go. Opposed? And abstentions. 2 abstentions. Right. We have now a number of items here which are going to be ready for the February 25 meeting.
When will not be? When will not be?
Okay. Well, the new contract between the town and the town hall employees, and that's the first item, and we could
Oh, 2 will not be.
we could move, we could assign committees on that. So, let's see, let me guess, maybe finance and budget.
I'm not sure. I mean, we already took action on it.
Yeah.
But, and it covers, I believe, about 32 employees. I didn't bring my sheet with me. Some of them are single numbers, but I believe PZNH has the most members, about 12 or 13, followed by Public Health and Safety, which I believe was about 11. So if you wanted to make any of them primary, we really wouldn't care. If you want them to just report on it, we wouldn't care. It's whatever the committee wants, we will do.
Folks, thoughts? Gary?
I'll go on with Jack's numbers, you know, and that PCNH become primary and public health and safety become secondary by the very nature of numbers, if no one else has a better idea.
And then F&B will report.
And F&B would
on the
be
findings.
another secondary, so you put
PZ&H
PZ&H primary
and,
and public safety secondary along with
H&S, yeah.
with F&B.
What's the timing of it? What is the timing of when we would need it to be done? Like PZ&H has
It has to
canceled
be
the
done
meeting?
this
Well, by-
February meeting.
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
Or it goes
the
into
meeting is,
effect without.
So we need to make sure that if it's assigned to PZ&H,
25th.
they don't cancel a meeting and they have it.
yeah, it's the 25th of February is the meeting.
Are they having a meeting in 2 weeks? We just had a meeting.
Here's the problem why F&B already handled 3 of these. Number one, all 3 of them were passed last Monday, the 3 that we addressed.
Right.
Were passed last Monday by the Board of Selectmen. And we wanted to have a meeting before the Board of Selectmen voted, which was originally scheduled for tomorrow. We have a winter break happening where families are starting to leave on Thursday night. So, really, if we want to go with that, I'm not sure where everybody's going to have a chance to meet unless they had scheduled things during winter break. I mean, we're more than willing to take it on because we've already addressed all the issues and had copies of the contracts read and had it, if it's a matter of timing for those other 2 committees. Just, it's a timing issue.
Jack, maybe that's a better idea. I said if there's a better idea, maybe that's a better idea. And then maybe the other 2 at least have a chance to take a look at it.
Yeah.
And would be secondary then. So I'd look for a better idea. Jack may have a better idea since he's familiar with it, or his committee's familiar with it.
There's a lot of information that you posted.
And that
Yeah.
isn't even all of it.
It's like, wow, it's like, yeah, I'll give you 5,000 more pages if you want it or something.
Yeah, if you wanted
Well,
a
thank you.
50-something page contract, which people read, and we had questions on.
Right. So it's out there.
Well, you really have to, because this thing's tucked in there, that you go right by you.
Yeah, but Kate does a good job in summarizing, just the same as the Board of Ed does when they summarize one of these contracts.
So we're agreeing to make F&B primary.
One now, we're talking about F&B being primary,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
All
the
right.
2 secondary.
That makes more sense.
PZ&H and PH&S
I said they
secondary.
were a better idea. Jack's got a better idea.
Do we,
That's a good idea.
I'm gonna just ask, do we need a secondary and what do you think?
Well, and any committee always has the
Yeah.
opportunity
It would be wise
to
to-
go and comment on any one of the resolutions that are there.
Yeah.
If they
But,
have
Because
their
they may
meeting,
have a different
if
opinion.
they have their
Yeah.
meeting.
If they.
But what
if-
happens if we put them as, my leading question here is what happens if we put them as secondary and then they don't have a meeting?
PZ&H,
They
we have a
say they
meeting
have
at
no
7.
report.
PZ&H, we have a meeting at 7 o'clock before the.
As we will have,
Okay.
public safety will do the same thing.
That's probably,
Okay.
All right, so,
that's the way to do it.
that
And if
works.
we don't have anything to say, then we just say no report.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so we want to
Continue
revise
with
the
them.
motion. We can ask for whoever the person was that moved it. I missed who moved that, but,
Well, I'll move that F&B be primary
okay.
and then
PZ&H secondary.
PZ&H secondary.
Public health and safety.
Okay. So, can I have a motion to that effect? You move that second, please? Okay, all in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? None.
Only means I had to change what I write in my report.
Now we know, Jack.
Patty did.
who seconded?
I did.
Yes. So,
Can I ask a procedure? Do the committees get notified after we have our meeting, or is it up to them to pay attention when that they've been? In other words, do we sort of send them our minutes, or same thing about when the same thing as when we assigned new members to a committee. Do we what's the mechanism for letting the committees know?
well,
'Cause I sometimes
the
think-
committee assignment is the district, right, because they're here. I work with Donna to make sure that the word gets out to the people so that they know their committees. And they get a copy of the minutes as well.
Yeah, but
Does
then,
the committee
in this,
know?
I think if I might rephrase what Adele is
Okay,
trying to
thanks.
say.
You get what I meant.
Because of the short work week coming up, can you take it upon yourself to let both the chair and the vice chair of both of those committees know tomorrow morning that they have been assigned? That way, if they need additional information, I should be home because it's snowing.
Jack?
No, but, but
Take
you
advantage of that one right
also
away.
contact
All right.
the vice chair because I believe Joanne is out of town.
Yeah, she is, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Actually, it really was more, it was more than that though, I was really
Yeah.
talking about in general.
Process.
I realized that a committee met, and they had a new member who knew they were supposed to be there, but the committee chairman.
Are you talking about education? Because that's what happened to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna talk about specifics, but the chairman didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so somehow I was looking to see if there's mechanisms in place so that they get notified, probably in both cases. New
Yeah.
members and the committee assignment, if the chairman can be let
All
know.
right,
You know, that's a
I'll
good
make
point.
sure that, I'll follow up on that.
And
Make
since
sure.
it's-
Yeah, sure.
Because we were voting that night, we weren't sure
We
whether or
do.
not to let her vote.
It was a rules assignment to the committee, so perhaps it's either you or your chairman or
Yeah.
vice chairman's
Yeah, right.
responsibility.
I might suggest that there's certain,
Be a
regardless
procedure.
of the minutes, that notifications are sent out the next day.
So that-
Because on this
Well, we-
next item we're gonna be talking about,
Hmm.
besides the fact, I'll make my comment when we raise it, but I went back to take a look at where this came from, to make sure that something wasn't decided in January, and was able to communicate with Joanne to find the history to it.
Okay, so, I'm in contact with Donna immediately because we have to send a warning out. So, tomorrow, I mean, it has to go out the day after we meet. So, I'll also make sure that we get the word out to the chairs in writing, that they've been assigned.
And in this case, we don't have any committee, but if we did have any committee assignments, that would be official also.
Yeah.
So would Donna be the one, you coordinate with?
Yeah, right.
And the chair,
yeah.
I think the chair of the district is also supposed to send, I mean, perhaps the chair of the district is supposed to send the person, who, the head of the committee.
The chairman of the committee is the person I think that's left out of the loop right now. So if you just add them to the list.
Yeah, because I always did that,
All right,
and then I was
yeah.
like, I don't want to step on Brad's
And I would say
toes,
when
it's
I
his
wasn't
thing.
on this body
Yeah.
before, I do remember getting blindsided.
Right,
Not
Okay.
not by a member on the committee, but of being assigned.
right,
Yeah.
okay, well, we'll put it out in writing, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, planning and zoning increase in fees. Mr.
That has not been approved.
Ah,
It gets approved as part of the budget process, not individually.
all right.
And there is, I know that PZNH has already addressed these with Jeremy and speaking to Joanne. She in fact sent me a copy of the resolution. And rightfully, PZNH should be assigned primary, F&B secondary. But I'm gonna ask that this be deferred until the March meeting. The reason being is twofold. Unlike the other three that we'll be addressing, the Board of Selectmen will potentially be approving these based upon deferring their budget vote on the day of our RTM meeting. And I don't know when it comes up and how long that meeting's going, whether or not we will be approving it ahead of them.
Yeah.
So fortunately,
Yeah.
it was, they delayed their meeting, but F&B wouldn't have had a chance to get to it as
No, I
it is. We
couldn't
just
agree more.
first-
It
We
doesn't-
just first found out about it when I saw it on this list.
No, I got a note from Kate said that, it was ready to go, and
It's not ready and done.
it's not, no, all right.
I mean, not that it's a problem, I will tell you,
Yeah.
Jeremy does a McKinsey analysis to figure out his fees, but there would be no way F&B could report on this at this time.
We need to
We
vote
can
on the
assign it.
Yeah.
So, we're saying PZNH primary, F&B secondary?
Yes.
So, that's right. Okay, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Okay, everybody in agreement? All in favor? All right. Making a note, so we will keep that off the agenda. Tax deferral for federal employees affected by the government shutdown. Sounds like F&B again.
Yeah, there's only, we've already taken
There's
action.
one person, right? Is there more than one?
Yeah, at this point, and the fact that there's only one person, I think, is immaterial, and I
Yeah.
don't want to even suggest that. And it will not be in F&B's report. But we have one outstanding question. We approve this. We'll take it on. We only have one question that Wayne has to get back to us on, and that is, should the government shut down again? The 60-day clock has started because the governments have been made whole. We actually have a government employee on our committee, and I also had a son-in-law who was affected by this. So I know both have been paid. But should the government shut down again, our question was, does the clock stop? And do we wait until they get paid again and start the 60 days ticking from there? We do not know. So that's the one outstanding aspect of this that I'm assuming that we'll have an answer to before the meeting.
All right. Good. That is just, it's F&B alone. Okay. Acceptance of gift.
Well,
Yes.
does the, we need a motion to that?
Okay, well, let's do it, sure.
Well, we have one for the,
Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, go ahead. Can I get a motion?
So I motion that F&B is primary.
Okay. Second, please.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor? Okay.
We're lucky.
Cut, paste.
You know, I'm so lucky. We've got somebody in office.
Yeah, yeah.
I would see these.
Fair enough.
thank you.
Oh, he does. I can't believe your head doesn't fall if that.
Okay. The gift.
Can I go back for a minute to ask?
Yes.
Someone planning, zoning, and housing. Can we discuss that and approve it, provisionally approve it for the Board of Selectmen so it can be done at the same meeting? Or do you have to wait another month for planning, zoning, and housing to review the fee increase?
The fee increases are not effective until the start of the year anyway, and are part of the budget process.
So it's not rushed, it's not rushed.
Not a rush at all. In prior years, we typically handled it sometime in April. So while it's there and while it's in the budget, it still hasn't, it's first being done by Board of Selectmen, and the budgets really are first being reviewed by aren't even done by the Board of Finance. I mean, we'll get into it when we get into the Board of Variance, why the BYO Darien congratulated F&B for being done with its budget. It showed that they had a great deal of legislative knowledge.
All right. Acceptance of the gift, $27,000, fireworks committee to the town to offset the cost of future events.
I recommend Park and Rec be primary and F&B's be secondary.
I second.
Yeah, secondary.
Right.
I second the motion.
Well,
Got Patty for a second. Jack for first.
health and social services,
No,
it's not really there.
Nothing.
Okay.
This is nothing. This is, we have changed how the fireworks work. We are continuing to do the private-public partnership. These are funds that were left over from the last fireworks. Because Park and Rec is now managing it, it is being transferred from the people that had those funds over, or the group that had those funds over to the Park and Rec commission department, one of the two. I'm not even sure which one, I think
Probably the
department.
department, yeah.
Yeah. There's some accounting issues, which is what we've gone through. And there's still fundraising. Remember, this is a gift for next year's fireworks being received in the current year. There's also a change which will allow F&B to report a little bit on. The Board of Selectmen are changing the accounting policy in this year's budget for several of the events that have been done with Park and Rec, to which I personally, I think the committee also agrees with. In the past, if we had sponsorship money in the town and we had expenses, they allowed them to offset each other, which really wasn't transparent. So now they're grossing up the expenses and they're grossing up the revenue to show both of them. It will account for some increase in the Board of Selectmen budget, which we'll have to explain in May. But it starts us to allow to educate some of the RTM members not to be surprised again when in May I'm talking about what the increase in revenue and the increase in expenses are, which really aren't increases. So just an accounting change.
Okay. So, motion for Park and Rec is primary, F&B is secondary?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Opposed? Don't see any? Abstentions, none?
No, I was like, I thought we already moved it, like.
Oh, no,
5
you weren't,
minutes ago.
yeah.
Okay.
You weren't opposed to it.
No, I was like, didn't Jack move it and I seconded
Yeah.
it 5
we
minutes
did,
ago,
yeah.
so we
That's what I
need
had.
to do it again.
I
Correct.
realized you were putting
And
it
I
down as opposed to.
Now it's
Yes.
really done.
Yeah.
Did it twice.
Whatever.
That's okay.
No, all right,
Yeah, so it had already been
Yeah.
motioned.
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to, after we
Sure.
make sure we're on. All right. Update on all of the activity going on in this plastic bag ordinance, which is working its way through a process. Leading the effort is Monica McNally, the Public Works Committee. So Monica, maybe you would kick off the discussion.
So, first of all, did anyone not see the public hearing? Tape. So did everybody see it? Everybody saw it?
10
Okay.
minutes, 10 seconds. I remember from the last speaker, 10 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay, so the meeting was well attended. We had 200 of these, and I have 53 left, so that's 147. But I don't think we had 147 people. I'd say we had between 110, 120 people. We had 77 people actually sign in. We had 30 people speak. 4 people were, 25 were what we would call positive. 4 were, had reservations or were flat out negative. And 1 was, I don't even know how to categorize this, don't care, but did speak. So, we have, the meeting was about an hour and a half long. And this, I think the speaker thing went well. This is my first time actually running a public hearing. Jim Cameron gave a great idea, which is to have 3 people in a row lined up, and I think that was a really good idea. It kind of kept the flow going. So the meeting was about an hour and a half long. And since then, we also have an RTM address, and we're getting letters sent in. And of that, 25 positive from 4 organizations positive, 3 businesses not positive. I don't know how else to put
When you
that.
say 4 organizations, do you mean businesses?
Might
What do
be-
you mean by
no,
an
it
organization
could-
versus a business?
Versus a business. Could be the Maritime Aquarium. It is the Maritime Aquarium.
Okay.
It's Surf Rider. It's EHII, plastic organization.
Could you give us the RTM address?
Yes, it's. I did this wrong at the meeting, that's why I'm stalling here. RTM, it's, Darien RTM at DarienCT.gov. I forgot the CT. So Darien RTM at DarienCT.gov. We're going to keep this.
Can I ask a question? Positive on what?
Well, let me.
No, let me
Okay.
finish. I am positive on banning the bags. I am not positive on some of the aspects of the ordinance that I have heard. So what are people being positive on?
Okay.
If we don't have the full story, I don't know how people can be making comment, other than a general comment that I'm okay with banning a bag.
Okay, so I'm gonna just go through my little thing and then we'll do a deep dive. So we have 3 businesses that are not in support of this. We have 3 individuals that are not in support of it, and we have the Chamber of Commerce who's concerned about it.
Would you mind if we asked the 3 businesses that were not comfortable with it?
Yes, Helen Ensign,
Okay.
Runner's Roost, and Diane Brown. So we had a meeting the day after, and my committee, Public Works, discussed what happened at the hearing. And we also then discussed different aspects of the ordinance that need to be ironed out. And when you look at the ordinance and you look at the other towns that have done it, Westport, well, forget Westport, but Greenwich, Newport, New Canaan, is working on it, Stamford, Norwalk, Weston. The language is it's pretty consistent. There are a few variables. So I explained this to my committee last night or the other night, because one of the variables is this thing called the 12 mil, and that's how thick the bag is, okay? So I explained that your regular bag that you get in the grocery store is just your the flimsy little bag, CVS, etc., right? Okay, so the ordinance in Stamford and the ordinance in Greenwich have a 2 1/4 mil rate. That's not tax rate, but mil. And that's the thickness of this bag. So there is going to be, all of these ordinances ban single-use plastic bags. Those are those flimsy bags. I thought I had a sample, but you can imagine.
Gotcha.
You can
Like
imagine.
the kind you get at Stop and Shop right now.
Right, okay. So those bags are gonna go away. So now we're going to discuss how thick the recycled bag is that you would get in the store. Usually you buy it, right? Okay, so this is a Stop and Shop recycled bag. This is a 3 mil, okay? So it lasts for a while, all right? It has plastic handles and they're glued on, okay? Connecticut is working on an ordinance also, and that ordinance would allow this kind of bag, okay?
The 3 mil.
For a while, yeah. I'm not even gonna talk about the Connecticut. Okay. The 12 mil is what the BYO group would like. It's what many towns have. Weston has a 4 mil, Stamford and Greenwich have a 2 1/4. The rest of the towns have a 12 mil. That's what this is. Okay, so the difference is that this will last a lot longer.
Can you tell us which ones have the 12 mil? You just named a bunch, I'm sorry. Do you know?
I can tell you Stamford and Greenwich have a 2 1/4.
Mhm.
Weston has a 4, and Norwalk, Norwalk has a 12. Who else has a 12?
You may want to check Stanford. Stanford, in the last minute, changed their mill on bags at their last Board of Rep meeting, which some reps were concerned about. I think they did. And I think some reps were concerned because they originally told businesses had purchased to comply, and then they changed their
Yeah,
businesses.
you know what, the
To
BYO,
Stanford.
actually the BYO group from Darien sent them a letter asking them to change that.
So both of those are
Was the
plastic.
BYO group covering
Yes.
the loss on the businesses?
They're trying to help Stanford.
Yeah, that's not helping the businesses in Stanford who purchased the bags under
Okay.
the original ordinance.
So the goal is for people to bring your own bag, and this would be the bag, okay, so this is fabric, it can be washed, that's one of the definitions of the reusable bag, it can be washed, it's sewn. Like I told my group, I wouldn't wash this because it'll probably bleed all over, but that's the concept, okay?
What's the mill of the bag that someone theoretically would pay a dime for?
That'd be paper.
Right?
Paper.
Oh,
Paper,
okay.
paper.
Okay, so the 10 cents charge is a charge that if you didn't have your own bag and you went into the store, you could buy a paper bag and you would be charged 10
So it'd be
cents.
paper, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
Can I ask a question there? Why would it be 10 cents if the bag costs 14 cents? How about making it 15 cents?
That's a possibility.
Or 20 cents and take care of some of the, anyway.
And I've expressed this before. So the fact of the matter is Stanford's own attorney, having read the document that was sent to the city reps by Kathy Emmett's group, advised against the mandatory charge of 10 cents for a paper bag. They said that there was a question as to its constitutionality. Towns are not allowed to tax for anything other than personal property tax.
By the state.
By the state, that's a state rule. In Connecticut, New York can do it, but in Connecticut, towns cannot tax anything other personal property. In addition, the next question is that while you can ban something for the general population, so you can ban cigarettes being sold within 500 feet of a school because it's for the general welfare of the population. So we have the right to ban bags. We don't have the right, or it's questionable, whether or not it would stand by law to instruct a mandatory charge for businesses to collect for the bag. That is maybe beyond the authority of any of the towns. And it also gets into the business side of telling businesses what to do without having a right to do it. I've offered two solutions. One is, especially now that Norwalk is having, I will also add something else. I had a very nice conversation with somebody who I highly respect in the environmental, and their response was, well, Norwalk passed it and Stanford passed it, so it must be good. And I reminded them that Louisiana just passed an anti-abortion law, and that they get struck down all the time in the Supreme Court, and a bad law is a bad law. And we shouldn't be rushing into something because we want something badly to end up with a bad ordinance. I've offered two solutions. One is to make it at the discretion of the merchant, because with now Stanford and Norwalk charging, those who feel that it would be a financial burden to them would be able to do it. Not the best way to modify behavior, but still it's the best way to comply with the law. The other thing, which I think is more important and may delay things, and there's something going on in the state which I'm not getting into, is that in legislation there is something called an expedited opinion, and I may be paraphrasing it. I would suggest it to Wayne that Darien take its ordinance with its 10-cent charge and request that the Supreme Court of Connecticut rule on it, which is very common in Congress and in state legislatures to have their Supreme Court rule on certain things to make sure before the legislature passes it that it complies with the Constitution.
Did Stanford and Norwalk do that?
Norwalk didn't even speak to their town council. Stanford went against what their town council recommended. So I don't care what they do. I don't want my schools to be theirs either, so I don't
That's just
follow
a
what they
question
do.
as we're looking to see what all the other towns have done.
As I said, a bad law is a bad law. Greenwich also did not impose the 10 cents, so you have the alternative side there.
Right.
I think with all the laws that are popping up and being supportive of the bad ban, I think that that's probably the best route to go. It will incur some expense because everybody gets to write dockets and the businesses do and the other people do. But we have done things in the state of Connecticut in order of supporting the environment. I don't know anybody who's bought a mattress lately, but you have a mattress disposal charge that's built in. If you buy a can of paint, I was surprised. I went to buy paint in Florida for my folks' house, and I asked them if they recycle paint, and they looked like I had two heads. Because you pay $2 fee for disposal of paint on every can of paint you buy in the state of Connecticut, because it's good for the general purpose but because they can tax and they can collect and they can give back to the countries, and as you know, we're a 5-cent bottle recycling state. So that's my second alternative, to get a good law in.
Monica, has anybody else, thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
That's interesting feedback. Has any of the other towns that you've done research on made it optional to participate? And if so, do we know how that's gone?
No, they haven't made it optional. Greenwich, Jack is right, they took they had a 25-cent charge in there, they took it out.
Where's West
So-
Point at? They have a charge?
All right.
They have no charge.
They have no charge.
They have 25 cents,
So what
so
if-
they took it out, but then that's the burden on the.
Yeah, the concept is that the fee, Choose to Reuse, I think was the group, they ran into trouble last time, and one of the main opponents was Palmer's.
Right.
And Palmer's feels that, that a charge levels the playing field for them, because the bag costs them about 15 cents to make, and they can't afford to give it away,
Right.
whereas some other stores can afford to give it away.
Jack, just
All
my
right,
own,
so, okay, Gary.
just my own interest, you did take it to the Supreme Court of the state of Connecticut. What time frame are we talking about here, Jack?
Don't know. It matters. They could be very expeditious in what they're doing. They could ask all the towns that have it to present their docket of proof. They could also ask other people to comment on it. But it would be a case of first impression for Connecticut, because there is no precedent law here. There's persuasive legal comments. That's when you're looking to a secondary source on what other states have done, all right? But many of the other states that have charges associated with it, or cities that do, it's actually treated as a tax, not a imposition onto businesses. So that would be, though, only persuasive precedent and not arguments, and not binding on the state of Connecticut. But, you know, there's two things that can happen here, and this is part of the reason why I'm saying it. Sometimes it's necessary to lose a battle to win the war. So if, in fact, the state Supreme Court decided that individual towns could not impose a 10, 15, 20 cent any charge, it might be enough to move the legislators to take charge, because this has come up on many occasions, and I think only once did it partially get to committee. And so this might be enough for it to get enough publicity that the state takes actions on it and figures out how to reimburse merchants back so that they're not at a loss here, which is what I would actually hope would then occur, because it's much better taken at it. It's more sustainable for the state of Connecticut if it's done at a state level.
Okay, so,
From an environmental perspective. These
so
little towns
now
just-
we're at the point where you've gotten a lot of input.
We have a lot of input.
It's not, you can go once around the room, and
We've
you had
hashed
a
out.
public hearing, which was an hour and a half. And so now, the question is, well, how do you get the three committees to start to put a point on this, get it focused to where you've got a resolution that you can bring forward and you can talk about? Right now, we have a whole bunch of ideas, bullet points. And Frank's committee, TGS&A, is really, we would look, I think, in your direction to come up with, working with town council, some sort of resolution that would work.
Well, as we've heard recently in Washington, thank you very much for that question, and I know you feel strongly about the topic. I had discussions with Wayne, and I wish he were here, and he may even be listening. With the original template that was offered by BYO, had the charge.
Mhm.
And so we had a discussion between BYO's technical person, Juliet King, and Wayne. And as a result of that meeting of the minds, Juliet offered some ameliorating language, and Wayne said, while he still had the objection, that the ameliorating language went a long way to addressing his concerns. So Wayne, if you're listening, what we expect that if we propose the charge, and the idea of having it as phrased as an optional charge is a very good suggestion. Put the optional in there, and that may solve some of the problems. Wayne will still, apparently will still, if he's asked on the floor of the RTM, Mr. Town Council, what do you think about this? He will still express his reservations. But he will also stress that all he is doing is advising the town, that the town doesn't always recognize, and the town doesn't always take his advice. And he's offering the advice of theoretical possibility that it is conceivable that someone might at some time follow suit against the town for whatever. And it is recognized that, separate from that, across the country, some 350 municipalities have passed this type of regulation. 117 of those have had the fee concept.
Again, that's
And I know
immaterial
if
to
my
the
brother
state of
jumps out the
Connecticut.
window, can I jump out the window too? You know, in other words, if the 117, it doesn't necessarily change it. However, the model legislation that is being proposed all across the country is of this nature. And while I know that you feel strongly about this topic, it's quite possible that the RTM, with the input of the public, would say that we should go forward with this as our colleague cities have done. And I also understand that our legal counsel on the colleagues in Stanford, they overrode him, and in Norwalk, they never asked him.
Right.
You know that.
Right.
But nonetheless, the juggernaut rolls on. Seth, to answer your question, the TGS&A had a meeting on Thursday night to consolidate the different views and to prepare a draft legislation. Would you mind passing this along? Which is based on the template
Please do. Thank you.
of, should go around.
You can pass it around.
Thank you,
All right,
Frank.
Sugar?
Yeah, I have that one already, right?
Yes, this is one now. And what you're looking at, which was distributed up at Public Health and Safety earlier this evening, and was available to Public Works on Thursday night, is a draft that completes TGS&A's preliminary work on this matter, so that it can be turned over to our two colleague committees. quite frankly, the BYO template was useful, but we also took cognizance of the other towns' phraseology in certain matters. And then the final couple of sections are, I won't call them boilerplate, but are the sections like severability and effective date and annual report, such that are added on there to Darianize the ordinance, the draft ordinance. Quite frankly, having been involved with the Blight operation about 2 years ago, we're kind of familiar with what those paragraphs look like. If we submitted raw material to town council, he would add these paragraphs anyway. But this represents a complete ordinance with certain exceptions. If you look, just jump right into any ordinance that has definitions, has purpose, and then whereas is at first, then purpose, and then definition, and your eyes glaze over, and then finally you get to the MacGuffin as to what is being prohibited and what is being allowed. If you jump to page 4, and this is just an illustration here, down on page 4, there's point number 2.12, item number 2 and 4. It says, as a minimum thickness of, whoa, asterisk, asterisk, AA, asterisk, 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 that's a placeholder. Because what TGSNA worked on is the language as opposed to the specific quantitative values. So let's go back to the first page again. AA, B, B, C, D through JJ are different topics that have been asterisked out or put a placeholder in there so that our colleague committees and other interested parties can comment as to how that ought to be filled in. Once that's filled in, you have an ordinance. Other paragraphs, there are some questions, there are some topics in here which are clearly up for grabs. For example, the one is JJ appears on page 3. Hope it out of order, but 2.1, item 2.1 on page 3, right up at the top, defining business establishment. Well, over in TGSNA the other evening, we had a wonderful discussion as to whether nonprofit entities, frankly, person to person and the DCA, should be included in the ordinance or not. And remarkably so, within TGSNA, it was fairly split. Some felt that the not-for-profit ordinance, a not-for-profit entity, is not considered a business establishment and should be exempt from the ordinance. There were others who said what's fit for this, what's fit for that. In other words, that not-profit should be in there. Guess what? We asterisked it out so that it could continue to be discussed. And the other topics are in here too. So there's a little cover sheet from A to J indicates the items that are not defined. However, what is defined is the sections that go along. There are several points in here, Jack, where there was a sort of a meeting of the mind between the BYO representatives and the town council, where the phraseology was put in here to not to soften, but to address his concern.
And, wait. Number one,
I said
no, wait.
Excuse me, Jack. I
don't like how you're
Are you
presenting
interrupting me?
that.
I'm interrupting you at a moment.
No, I don't like how you're presenting that because there are other legal
Jack.
opinions here.
Jack,
Jack,
I know
that's all I'm
you feel
saying.
strongly about this.
Jack.
Yes, I do.
Point of order, please. He's got the floor. You'll be next.
Wayne still has concerns, but he has been softened through the softening and explanatory language in here, which indicates that it is an environmental charge, certainly not approaching a tax, on the business established to encourage compliance with the purpose of the ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance clearly states now, I won't read it to you, it's on the bottom of page 2. And it indicates what it is we're trying to do and not what we're trying not to do. And I know your concern is, just as Wayne originally stated, And you stated it very well a few minutes ago. But he's backing down on it to an extent, and BYO is coming forward to an extent. Now, the deal may be struck, by the way, with at the last minute sticking in here the option clause. That may be our parachute to get this to work nicely.
Can I ask a couple of
Over.
questions?
Over.
Jack, no, I'm just, okay. Number one, I see reference to an environmental compliance officer. Has that been agreed to? Because my understanding from the Board of Selection is that this is supposed to be expense neutral to the town. So, and no mistaken, that's the position of the Board of
Absolutely,
Selectmen.
absolutely, you're perfectly right, and that has been our assumption all along, that no town funds would be expended to implement this.
So who,
Therefore, the appointment of and by the way, we have quite a discussion about what this person should be called, like
Yeah.
a bag officer or a bag police.
yeah, you don't want to call him the bag man.
And this this term that you find through here, environmental compliance officer, is an art form, because if there are other ordinances that require, like straws or paper cups or helium balloons, the environmental compliance officer would be a nice title for the person that has to do that. Understanding that it's not a town employee, which has been our assumption all along, that the selectmen will appoint someone just as they appoint members of the Harbor Commission, or appoint members of the Beautification Commission.
I thought you
That
were
they
stepping
appoint an
that trap.
individual who would, as a volunteer, as we all are volunteers, we're elected, but we volunteered to be elected.
Okay.
And then in the blank,
Can I just say something? I'm
Yeah.
meeting with Jamie tomorrow, we'll figure it out.
Say again?
Okay? I'm meeting with Jamie tomorrow, so we'll
and
address
that's
that.
great.
Well,
So the,
can I ask some
No,
things
I
to
was-
figure
I was-
out when he's
I
done?
was interrupted here.
Yeah, when he's done.
The possibilities, as in blight, we had a concern about a blight review board. And the problems with the DTC and the RTC to come up with other volunteers, because they're already stressed to get volunteers to do various things. So what in blight we did was to say that the people who were being on the blight review board would be selected from certain committees. And so a person who's on a certain committee, like the Human Services Committee, would have an additional duty of doing that. So in other words, the person who would be selected or volunteered to this is probably already a town volunteer, has already been vetted for that appointment by the DTC, RTC. The interesting question is that if a citation ever has to be written, and it's, maybe in the whole history of maybe like 1 or 2 citations would be written. I don't believe that somebody would be going around issuing a whole lot of tickets when this thing comes in. But to provide for that, there's also an environmental compliance hearing officer. In other words,
Yeah, no, that was anticipated.
the
Yes.
environment officer would be authorized to write citations. And this is interesting, because right now, the only people in town that we know of who can write a citation are the police, the animal control officer, some people in planning and zoning, and possibly Department of Health. I'm not really sure about that, but they're all town employees, and this will be something new. So Wayne has indicated that the state authorizes the towns to create citation officers. It doesn't specify they have to be town employees. So we may catch a break on that topic as well.
I would be curious, only from, again, there's 2 things. First, it's very important, and I just did a quick read of the whereas, but very similar to how Orange did their banning of selling cigarettes. I do believe the whereases could be made stronger, which is very important for
I have a
substantial.
confession. When looking at other towns' ordinances, and our own, when they're put into the Muni Code, the whereases are stripped off. I don't know why. So I didn't have my hands on whereases. However, I did steal these from Stanford.
Okay.
And the Stanford one leaked in. And so I had to come up with some, we had to come up with some paragraphs. And quite frankly, every ordinance needs the whereases. And so I just pulled them down and put them on here.
Yeah, but in order to pass the ban, which is very important, and I am in favor of the ban, the whereas is to establish the general welfare of the public have to be extremely strong. So anything that you can do to strengthen these, I would suggest. That's number one.
Well,
However,
I confess
on-
that they haven't been edited, they are what they are.
This is a draft.
Yeah, no, I
This is just a
understand,
draft.
I'm just making a general comment. As for the person being a volunteer, the problem is that that individual becomes an agent of the city, of the town.
Jack, I'm gonna go with what town council says on this,
So there's a lot of liabilities
if he
that
says
I
we
would
can do-
like your committee
If he says we
to
can
be
do it,
able to come back to my committee and say, what is the town liability? Can they be insured? If they get into a car accident, who is liable? If there's disruptive to business and the business feels that they have created a problem, what is the town liability? So I would like Public Works, since you're taking the lead, to be able to come back to F&B with answers to those questions. That's part of where, Monica and I have agreed that once we have an electronic copy, I'm gonna give it to the members of F&B, so we can come up with any questions of a financial nature to hand
I
back
think
to.
the time is ripe to do that. now.
Right. Well,
Because
within all the other budget
It's
stuff.
version 1.3.
Right.
We're looking for input from our colleague committees, of particular some of these quantitative information, but you've got
Right.
other input.
So
the-
we're gonna
the time
pass
is
them
right.
back over for them to develop the answers to it.
Jack,
Okay,
could you send
folks,
me- could you
one
send me an
second.
email with exactly what
May I
you're
make a
looking for?
comment?
Yeah,
at
yes,
some
I'm
point?
heading that way, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Me?
go on, yes, please. Barbara Thorne,
It's
please.
very difficult to change people's habits. Shopping is a habit, and we're working on changing how people approach going to the grocery store. Do you have your bags in your car? And possibly, maybe you would also bring your plastic bag, whatever they are, whatever size they are. That can't be illegal.
No, you can bring any bag in you
can bring
want.
any
You can-
bag you want.
You can bring
So
your
perhaps
CVS
we
bag
need
into
to-
Walgreens.
Maybe we need to stop being quite so, it feels like punitive, and start being more encouraging. Try it, let's see, give it some time. How many bags can you bring? Can you bring, can we use those skinny bags that you put your waste in, and can
Answer to all your questions is yes. We had a fellow on teach yesterday that said, can I come in with a Costco box? Yeah,
yeah.
there's no restriction
Or
on that.
would the stores perhaps buy the bags they can buy at the dump, that you put your table
Anything you'd
scraps
like.
in?
Anything you'd like.
Would be, for your.
Try
just
going
meat
into
or
Macy's
for your
with a
whatever
suitcase,
is the
though.
problem. I mean, I think there's ways of solving this without coming down with the compliance officer from the town of Darien coming around.
Well, when you have an ordinance, you need to be able to enforce it, so even if they never write a ticket, there has to be somebody in there.
So then you're talking more personnel. There's no way around it.
Barbara, the assumption that we've worked hard on this is the selectmen's request to us that when they mandatory, well, they didn't mandatory, but they referred it to the RTM, they strongly suggested that no town resource is going to. And when you read this, you'll find that that's true.
Except you keep talking about an enforcement officer.
That's a big question.
But
You
one
know
person,
what, that is a big, there are some big questions.
Yeah.
The legality is a big question. We have 12 people on our committee. I asked every single person, I explained again, I read the letters from town council, and people still, I did not vote myself, but 11 people wanted to go forward with the 10-cent charge, even if it was against town council
And the
recommendation.
10-cent charge is easily passed on to the consumer.
Well, we are
Behind you or
paying,
with you.
it
It
does,
is passed on.
the consumer
But-
pays it and the
There's no
store
doubt about
keeps it.
Yeah.
But there's
What's going on
several
right
However,
others.
I want to reinforce that what this is designed, and we're working with the assumption that no town resources are put into this. That was our original charter, and we've been true to it.
One sec, are there,
I was
Yes,
just gonna go back to types of bags. I don't know if you guys go to Trader Joe's, but if you look at their plastic bags that you put your meat in, they're biodegradable plastic bags. I mean, is there any discussion?
Any bag that you use within the store is okay.
No, but I'm saying, is there any discussion of the creation of something larger than that? Do you know what I'm saying, that that the stores can have for people who may not show up with a bag?
That would be up to them. That would be up to the store.
There's,
But it would, you
somewhere in
would
here,
probably need the language for
I
something
know,
like
I
that.
know, you were given this maybe
No,
7
I'm
minutes
just,
ago.
I'm just saying,
and
it's
somewhere
just
buried
another
in-
thought because it exists.
Somewhere buried in here
Right.
is the answer to your question. In other words, there's nothing to prohibit the store from making available, selling, or whatever they want to do,
You got
a bag that's compliant with the.
Adele, do you have anything you want?
Oh, me? No, I said what I said. I think that you're gonna if you're gonna charge, then you ought to cover the cost.
If, may I have something
That's what I'm
else?
saying. The use, yeah,
You know what, Adele, I guess, I would what I will do is I will ask the stores what they want. You know.
I realize there's a difference between some businesses and other businesses. I mean, I
Right.
think we all think about the grocery stores, and that's a little
Right.
more straightforward, and it's a little different.
Well, that brings me to another point. So there are two problems with the ordinance itself. The legality issue, where our town council isn't totally supportive. So that is out there, and Wayne is not budging too much. So when we get in front of the RTM and he is asked, I can guarantee you he's not going to, endorse this wholeheartedly. Enforcement is another issue, working on that. A bigger thing is, what I noticed at the town hearing is that the no's, or the more negative people on this, were the businesses. And you learn all kinds of things when you have a town hearing that you weren't expecting. So I was not expecting this, but the stores have, so in this ordinance, the paper bag has, the composition is stipulated. And that's pretty consistent over all of the ordinances that we've seen. It's 100% recyclable, it's made out of 40% recycled material, right? So so we have, so Runner's Roost has 500 bags. I'm gonna read a little bit of a letter to you, okay? My group read this and it kind of changed the conversation. My name is Erica Jensen and I own the Helen Ensign shop on the Post Road in Darien for the past 42 years. I am a high-end women's clothing and accessory store. I use 3 sizes of shopping bags and 2 sizes of garment bags. 54 inches for pants and jackets, 72 for long evening gowns. All of these bags are made out of 4 mil plastic. That's her bag. Okay, that's the 4 mil. Which are definitely reusable and very strong. They are made from recycled plastic, mainly recycled plastic bottles, as per my packaging representative, and they are recyclable and marked as such. All these bags are white and black with black polka dots with a yellow stripe, which is my trademark. Because they are so special to me, they cost approximately $1 per bag. The minimum order is 2,000 pieces per style per size of bag. I usually order 3,000 pieces per style of the bag because the price per bag goes down with every additional 1,000 that I order. Therefore, I have 1 to 3 years worth of each size of bags in my garage, worth many thousands of dollars. I did not read anything in the proposed ordinance about allowing the retail stores to use up existing stockpiles of bags on hand. This would be essential to me as I could not afford to replace these thousands of dollars of bags. Okay, so you understand the point. Okay, so Diane Brown also wrote in and has a large supply and can't order, doesn't have room to store 1,000 bags, which is what she would have to order of the new bags to make it sense. So kind of unintended consequences. These people are not our problem, okay? Now, if this store sends 20 bags out a day, I'm happy for them. So this is something that we need to address. So I thought, okay, what can we do? We have to let them work off these bags. So maybe we give them a 1.5 years or 2 years. Get them through a couple of Christmas cycles, whatever. And we put the plastic bag ban in, but we let the paper composition part go for a couple of years. So that was one concept. So my committee wanted, this was what they said. They said that the implementation date, so once the ordinance is passed, when does it become effective? And the plan was to let it become effective January 1st with a 30-day period, like a grace period, where you could get warnings. So first you get a warning, then you get a $150 ticket, and then you get a $250 ticket. So give people a chance to work off these bags. So the reason that I wanted to talk to you about this is because I would love ideas on that, because those people are the people that will be impacted immediately, and they're not the problem, in my opinion.
Okay,
In response
yeah,
to that, if everybody turns to page 8, effective date. When ordinances become on such and such a date, perhaps January 1st. Business shall be permitted to distribute prior to the enactment of this ordinance until another fill in the blank. So these are the things that we would love to have input on.
Yeah.
And they're all set up. But one more thing before is that letter and all other 36, I think there are 37 letters up there at the moment, and they're up to date. Those letters to Darien RTM at DarienCT.gov, they go to Donna, and then we put them up in the cloud. And so when you review the cloud, you'll see that letter and all of the other ones.
Jack, did you?
Yeah, I had another quick question, but this is going to be part of the list, because after we were texting back and forth, I wrote down some things without having this as a thing. So if you can send me, or somebody can send me this electronically, I'll pass it on to my committee. But one of the concerns I have, I'm in favor of the bag, and you and I can have a conversation sideways. I do think it's of concern, and how do you write in some grandfathering, because we don't want to make it unfavorable to businesses that we rely on our downtown, especially with the new mall coming in. Mm-hmm. We don't want to put small businesses at a major disadvantage and lose them over bags.
Right.
But so in that light, I was wondering, I guarantee that any of the BYO groups in the state don't have this, because it's not their focus. But I'm very worried, I'm very concerned or wishing that we get a ruling from the Department of Revenue on this, because there's certain exclusions to sales tax and what is taxable and what is not. And if we're imposing a 10-cent charge, I'd like a ruling of whether or not that is a taxable event for sales tax. And on certain clothing under a certain dollar amount, it is not a taxable item. But then if we're adding a 10 cents and the Department of Revenue has decided that is taxable, there's a whole bunch of systems and tax implications that it would be nice that we could say we've requested a ruling and here's what it is to help our businesses, as opposed to each one having to try and find out. I mean, again, it's falling on your committee, and it's something that I would have wished that the BYO folks would have at least already approached on this to get a ruling from the state level, but I know that's not their focus. But that's something else. Again, I'm in favor of banning the bags, without question. I can go out to my car now and you'll see all sorts of bags that are there, and I joke that I'm waiting for, since I can't walk out with Nordstrom bags anymore, whether or not Nordstrom is going to allow me to bring a rolling suitcase in. I highly doubt that. But so I'm in favor of banning. There's just certain concerns, but I also want to make it as smooth and easy a transition for our businesses, especially small businesses that are being challenged not only by the internet and e-commerce, but also by the fact that a major store mall is being put in only right up the road. And I'd hate to see Darien's downtown be affected, especially since there's going to be significant retail developments that are going on in the three
But they're bad, they have,
businesses.
Norwalk already has an ordinance, so all those mall stores are gonna be subject to the Norwalk ordinance.
That's correct, but you know, when you're dealing with the small, those are all major change, although many of them.
No, I agree with you,
at that.
but-
But I need to be able to give them answers, because similar to that shop or the Runner's Roost, they don't have a bunch of attorneys and tax accountants that are gonna be figuring out what the sales tax implications are. And so those are things that we should be doing to help our businesses along.
Okay. So now we've got to figure out how we get 3 committees to fill in these blanks.
Easy.
There's plenty of, you know, if you came in with a few blanks, we picked up a few more tonight, okay?
Yeah.
So the question then becomes.
We're gonna do what you said. We're gonna have 3
you've
people
got-
from each committee. We're gonna meet and we'll hammer it out.
Yeah,
Right, Monica,
Yeah.
can I make one suggestion, or perhaps you know this? Maybe the 3 folks that gave you the concerns about their bags, can you also ask them if they order a large quantity of bags, is it once a year, or are they doing it once a quarter? Because if we're gonna implement it so-called, say, January, right? It might be hard, like if their busiest time is Christmas, and they've ordered X amount of bags, but you don't know how much they're gonna sell, are they then stuck, you know, with these bags? So from a timing perspective, would those smaller businesses actually prefer it not to kick in on a January 1st and kick in on a time
Well, you
Yeah.
can
a little
comply
later?
early.
It's just a suggestion
Yeah.
to ask, as you're looking for feedback.
So I was gonna add, because you're saying that Helen Angson, for example, has 3 years worth of bags or something like that. It's not like Darien has that many small businesses. Is it worth it to ask each of them, what is your backlog? How many
Yeah.
years worth of bags do you have, or how many months worth of bags do you have? And then maybe have to make some kind of accommodation for those individual businesses to allow them to work through their supply.
Roll it
Could you
out.
do it by
You
square foot?
could actually put
or-
it in the ordinance giving certain people additional time to
Right.
go through additional stock that was purchased. What I might suggest is send to all the businesses a heads up saying, we are looking to implement this as if it's coming down the road. Please do not do what Stanford City Reps did, which is they had one thing in the ordinance and then they changed it just like a month before, so they put businesses at a disadvantage. But since you know what you're basically going to have, say, this is where we're going, I would suggest that after a certain date, anything purchased after that, we will not be giving a waiver on. So if you could comply ahead.
For once, we might be there already. Take a look at what section 15 says.
Yeah, but no, what I'm saying
Yeah, but
is,
no.
yeah, that doesn't address it. What I'm saying is, you can actually give them a heads up that if you purchase it, let's say,
They've had a heads up.
I know, but
If
it's
we have
always
another
better to
public
give a
hearing.
formal, it's always better to give a
yes.
formal written notice.
Jack, it's our responsibility not to go around town to all the businesses. What we have done is had a public hearing on this topic. And once we get this straightened out, I suggest we have another public hearing so people know what we're proposing. I don't feel like going down up and down Post Road warning the businesses.
But
Ain't gonna do it.
if you actually allowed me
All right.
to continue,
Okay.
what I was gonna say is that if you told them that any bags purchased before June, or we will allow you to use that stock.
I'll write that in there.
Anything after, we would, you're
Well,
That's
on
fine,
the road.
that's fine. In other words, that can be written in there. I don't have any objection to that.
All right. So,
Just
I
one other thing
Lois,
will keep
excuse
Mr.
me,
Davis
Lois,
happy
I recognize Lois and then, go ahead.
is that the original ordinance had, the fines are not going to be very large in this thing. There may be 1 or 2 fines will be written and the word will go out. But the original language that the proceeds would go to an environmental fund for education. Recognizing that we're trying to cut down the number of funds in town, you will see that the proceeds, as small as they are, will go into the general fund.
Well, we would
Are
have
you
taken
happy?
that,
Are you
exactly, I already told you I would have taken that out right from the floor.
Lois,
It's in there.
And neither Kate
Excuse me,
nor
guys.
Jen would have.
Let the record show that he's happy.
yes, as I heard it. Lois,
I just have one thing that I heard that I just want to bring forth, and that was the idea of making it optional for the store of whether to charge the fee. I think what I heard in the hearing was they didn't really want to have to deal with their clients that way, and if you say it's optional, then they can't charge it, and then we fouled up that piece.
Yeah.
I think they basically said, either you tell
That's a
me.
glimmer of hope that was lofted here about 15 minutes ago.
That's a good point.
That may be the workaround.
Yeah.
That it's optional. But what I'm saying is, what I heard on Wednesday is they didn't want it to be optional because they didn't want to, that they wouldn't charge and then they get stuck with
Yeah,
the fee.
and it
It's just
costs
what I
about
observed.
14 cents to make the paper bag and about 3 cents to make the plastic bag. So they will take a hit when there are no more plastic bags. Now, also, remember though that eventually, hopefully, everybody brings their bags, so you could look and say, well, eventually they'll save money because they don't have to buy any bags. That is one way to look at it.
I guess my feeling about the fee is it's the motivation to get people to bring their personal bags, not to, that without the fee, then there's no motivation to change your behavior.
It's not even changing your behavior for grocery shopping, because I mean, it's
10
just second
cents is
nature to me to
meaningless.
bring my bags into the grocery store, but I would have to think twice about it when I'm going into a clothing store.
Right.
That's where I think the change in behavior is gonna
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah, so we could, there's another way to do it, and I forgot, I saw one ordinance, and it was on square footage, so we could do,
Yes.
but then my committee didn't like that because, Chinese stores use a lot of bags and they have small stores, so, I don't know what the answer is, I don't know.
you're taking another step. If you wanted some pointed comments, some in-depth diving, welcome to the Rules Committee.
Thank you for all your hard
Let's
work.
go on and set the agenda here for February
So
25th.
what do you
Yeah.
actually recommend that structurally we do as the next step? Because what we're saying,
Well, I
we're going
think
to accept
Monica
input, that's
mentioned
fine.
something there, and that is to put a conference committee together that could get into these nuts and bolts and get something nailed down on it.
But
And then they could
As committee chairman,
yeah,
Right, but,
can I appoint people to that
Yeah.
conference? I can do that?
yeah. I would,
gonna ask
I
for
would,
volunteers.
I would, just to be democratic, I would advise having a meeting with your committee and have your committee appoint the 3 people, vote them in, and then I really
So I
think
would
it's a better.
call a special committee
Yes,
meeting
I
for the
understand.
purpose of having the volunteers to
Yeah.
identify themselves to
Right.
be on the conference committee.
That's
So,
right.
well, so they've read it, had a chance to read this and get some thinking about it.
they've been thinking about it.
Yeah, they've,
It's not ready, it's coming, it's coming, yeah, it's not ready.
I actually listened to the Public Works Committee, and I've talked about it. I thought it was a very in-depth conversation that they were having there. There were a lot of points. I was watching it on Channel 79 at some ungodly hour. It was, I think that the committees have had good discussions. There's just a lot of little points that are out there that, when you start to go down, and once you have something, then, as I said, there's financial liability and other questions that we could have once we see what the proposals from the 3 committees were. Otherwise, it was just conceptual. So
Well,
this is very
as we
good.
stand now, the big question is the legality.
Yeah,
Okay, and that doesn't lie with us, that lies with Wayne,
right.
okay? And so,
It lies with the courts ultimately.
so we are moving this ball down the field and with the understanding that we don't have the full support of town council. is that okay? Because otherwise, the other option is we stop what we're doing, we try to do whatever, Jack, you're gonna send me an email, what you want me to look into. And we stop and we investigate Supreme Court, first impression, some things. Is that what you want us to do? Or do you want us to continue moving the ball down the field, meeting on February 26th with my committee, getting these 9 people together, getting this, fill in these blanks, which we're very close on, and getting this over to Wayne?
Yes.
That's the other option.
I
What
think,
do you want us to do?
I want you to move it down,
I want you to
continue
keep
moving
moving
down.
it
Yeah.
down the road.
Could I not amend this, but getting it back to this committee before we get it to it, because we're not, I don't think that we're empowered to deal with town council right away if we come up with something. We just need to bring it back to this group so that Seth sends it to Wayne.
That's fine.
It's sort of a check stop
I
to
am-
make sure that we're not going off the deep end.
Yeah, I think that where you're the chair of a committee, that you can talk to them, particularly,
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is increase dialogue and have the opportunity to work through some very nitty problems. So I don't see any problem with the chairman of the TGS&A committee talking to the town council on this, because we're drafting legislation, and this isn't,
Well,
Yeah.
quite frankly, a lot of the
Right.
boilerplate at the back, I'm not a lawyer, and I, of course, I've depended on
I
other
wouldn't-
sources for that.
I don't
But
see it as a
everything
problem
Monica
there.
said was correct.
Yeah.
I only wanted to add that when this committee does come up with its recommendations, that it comes through this committee
right.
on its way to Wayne.
Is that what you want, Seth? Do you want us to write this up, fill in the blanks, and then come back to you? Or do you want us to write this up, fill in the blanks, take it to Wayne, and then come back to you?
I think what you want to do is come back with something that's going to go before the RTM
So
that
you
you
want us-
think is, you 3 committees, which is a third of the RTM, más o menos,
Can we just,
can do, you know,
Okay.
that's what I'm
point
saying.
of clarification.
Yeah,
I'll tell you my own thoughts. I think that you have to continue to work with Wayne throughout the process to make sure it's as buttoned up as possible. All right, and that
And that's
just
what we're
being,
doing.
and continue to do that. And even though I have concerns about different things, again, I don't want to stop the banning of the bags, so moving it forward is that, again, I'm against bags, and you can go out to my car and see all sorts
Got it.
of different types of bags that I use, including beach bags sometimes, whatever you got. So, but that being said, if I'm not mistaken about this process, does this also need approval by the Board of Selectmen prior to coming to us?
no,
Why would it?
They've turned it over.
They already,
They sent it
No.
to us.
they passed a resolution sending it to us.
Oh, boy,
Oh,
did
I
they just kick the
I
can
spoke
down.
with, yeah, I talked to town guys,
Yeah.
Said
moved-
no,
they-
it's just
they
an
added on
RTM.
this.
it's
Yeah.
us.
The actual wording
So-
was, they had a unanimous motion to move the discussion and the potential creation of an ordinance to the RTM.
Yeah,
That was the
That-
motion.
in
That's
terms
potential, but
of
what about that word
communication,
What
and,
about the word potential?
It's cool, I don't wanna deal with it, have the RTM deal with it.
thank you very much.
In terms of
That's
communication.
very perceptive, yes.
I heard it said twice tonight that the
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen made it crystal clear that this would be cost neutral to the town. A
That's
literal interpretation of that.
Yeah, right.
Would it have to go back to the Board of Selectmen to incur costs to have town council review it?
No, because we
That's what it is
have,
now.
he's under, he
Yeah,
not only
he's
represents the
retained.
selectmen, he represents RTM and others.
I think you're raising a good point, because if somebody is being appointed, one would hope that there's certain training that they're going to receive. Who's providing that training? If they're going to be assigned, is this a new employee that needs to be covered under some blanket liability insurance? What is the cost to that? Is it considered minimal? Does their automobile need to be insured? I mean, what are the liabilities and what are
Even if
the
it's a volunteer.
Even if it's a
Again,
volunteer,
volunteer.
because the fact of the matter is, yes, because part of the problem is we don't pick the drivers,
Right.
and our insurance on that is extremely high. We were just talking about it at the Board of Selectmen budget meeting. So those are costs that at some point somebody has to go back to Kate to say, can you, if this is what we're proposing and this is what's going on, what would be the incurred cost to the town? And it's really not, and F&B's job then is to review what Kate is telling you. But, you know, because F&B might come up with other solutions to it, but since you guys are
So we have
drafting
three,
the ordinance.
we have three committees working together, a conference committee.
Right.
And as I just heard, that the work product that they produce can go directly to the attorney
Right.
and come back here for action on voting of the RTM.
Well,
Now,
no.
what is Jack
after-
is suggesting it's more than those three committees, that he wants the F&B to have a piece of the review before it goes to the attorney.
Well, we would naturally.
That's why I suggest
Yeah,
that this
yeah.
work product comes back to this group to do whatever this group decides to do.
But if.
Before it goes to, you know, it's going to the attorney on an informal basis, make no mistake about that. But before the thing is submitted for official consideration, I'll make my request again that it comes back here, because then he can get a piece of it. Otherwise, we send it right up to them.
Yeah, you're right. But there is, but Monica and I were talking about it on just how to work that out. I'm gonna take the ordinance, pass it to the members, try to gather questions, and forward it on to her committee. Because, I mean, right now we're doing 2-hour meetings anyhow.
Okay, so
and
you'll get your
meeting
bite
about
of the,
3 times
so
a week.
you'll get your bite of the apple before it goes to the committee of 9.
Well, as soon as I get this, I can send it out to the committee.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
can't
we'll
promise
get
that I'm
your
gonna get
recommendations.
anything else, not recommendations, we're gonna give you
Your observations.
Right.
questions. We're gonna give you questions
Going in to the
going
committee
in
of 9.
to anybody who you wanna give it to, I don't care.
But then when the committee of 9 decides something, comes to the resolution, it goes, what you're saying, it goes directly to the attorney at that point.
Well, but you also, you know, we can talk offline.
Yeah.
on this.
No,
This is rules committee.
Okay.
This is the
Right.
rule.
So,
We're
if,
establishing the rules.
okay, as an example, if I ask what is the liability and what's the incremental cost of having volunteers, what is it going to do to our automotive things, does this person's car have to be insured? It then is the responsibility of, I don't care if it's the 9 or one committee or anything, to go and speak to Kate and get estimates so that you have numbers as opposed to just deciding you don't want to deal with it. And then we can have those conversations subsequently, because there are certain alternatives, and it's thinking through and, you know, who goes for the sales tax implications to the businesses. Again, not the town's responsibility, but whether or not we do something right is not necessarily associated with what's
So how about we
responsible.
do this, Jack?
But-
We will get this to you tonight, okay?
Okay.
But maybe you could, because some of these questions are gonna take me a while to research, and it will be me researching them.
Yeah.
So if you could just get me started with
As
stuff.
quickly as I can. I'm gonna work with you as best I can, and some of my people will be on vacation during next weeks, but I will be over trying to forward stuff to you as quickly as I can.
Okay.
So clearly, the opportunity for dialogue while you're doing this is there, okay? And I think that's the best way, because collaboration is gonna be the key to try and nail
We
this
were
thing
talking
down.
over the weekend.
So, right, so, but we're on the right
I'm gonna
track.
give you a call, but
The
you-
important thing is that, in the end, we've got a resolution that's been, that you folks, from a wording standpoint, the 3 key committees have got nailed down, that you've got it to a point where then F&B has looked at it and said, okay, based on that, you know, this looks
F&B
good.
has looked at it. Whether or not we come up with a different opinion is okay.
Right, but that's, you know.
But at least we've looked at it.
Well, and also it's something that we haven't talked about, really,
Yeah.
until tonight,
Yeah.
really, is all of financial parts of it. And also when we asked Jack, we asked Jack if he'd like to step in and be part of this, but I think coming in now is a better time than early in the game, because at least it's a little more focused, it's focused where you can see where it is.
And quite honestly, my committee members have been putting in 6 to 8 hours a week for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm hesitant to ask them to do more at this time.
Yeah, well, and there's plenty to do. I think you're on the right course. I think getting the I's dotted and the T's crossed and get the definitions in, that's a big step. It's still a big step to go. But you look at what you've done so far. It's really remarkable, and we can all thank you very much, because it's a tough job. We don't legislate a lot from the RTM standpoint. Yes, Barbara, you have.
Just a comment. Please go back to your committee and don't tell them not to be discouraged with this meeting, because what you have done is outstanding. You've moved it so much farther than when they first came and talked to us. They weren't sure how to proceed, and you have taught them how, and you're teaching them how. And don't give up.
We're not gonna get
We're gonna roll it. I swear rolling it out might be one of the answers, but we'll figure it out.
But you know what, my last comment would be, really, if you have any other thoughts and you wanna email me, please. I'm all ears, okay? I really appreciate all of your.
Great.
And Monica, you know that I spoke to you after watching your committee meeting, saying that it was a great committee meeting, especially you're a new chair to that, and that's always difficult. Mark knew when to leave. No.
You've been very silent, Mr.
Dodge that one,
That's why.
Moving out of Darien?
It took me to this weekend to figure that out.
Can we set the agenda for February 25?
I have one other thing on other business.
Well, can we set the agenda first and then do
That's
other
the other
business?
I think it's part of the agenda.
Oh, all right.
A statement was really egregiously made, and I verified it with Wayne. The Stanford Economic Development Director was touting that it was the first time ever that the senators and legislators of Fairfield County gathered together to talk about those 5 things. That is a massive misstatement. It is something that occurred on a consistent basis, regardless, both parties would come together, and Wayne confirmed this, on a consistent basis to go and move those things that were important to Fairfield County forward. I know why it stopped. I'm not going to mention Senator Duff's name, but that's why it stopped. So I think it's important that when you have such a misstatement, that at least that part is clarified to the RTM.
Okay,
Do you
so,
have a blight committee update? Did you get the blight officer's report to present?
I don't have, I don't know what their schedule for the next meeting is, quite frankly.
No, but I mean, his
And we
report
brought
that he
it
had
up
to file.
It's been brought up to them, and we'll see when they produce a report. Thank you for mentioning it.
But we should schedule something that they can do an update on
They
what's happened in the last
The way
year.
the ordinance is written, they are to report to the selectmen. They don't report to us.
But it's a.
I agree with you, and I know you feel strongly about that topic.
Oh, no, I think
but
we passed an
but
ordinance
as we
that
pointed
the
out
RTM
last
deserves to
time-
know how the ordinance is doing.
Of
that
course,
we
of
passed 2
course.
years ago.
But as we pointed out last time, we are not directing the blight committee. The selectmen are the agent and not agent, but the convening authority, and the blight committee needs to report to the selectmen.
Can we have a report after they report?
Of course.
That's what I think is the compromise.
Of course.
yeah,
the officer reports to the committee, and then the committee gives a report.
To the Board of Selectmen, and after that time, then we can request it to be
I mean,
part
if-
of
I-
our.
To my
Yeah.
knowledge,
I
the Blight Committee has never reported to the Board of Selectmen.
This is the first year cycle. This is the first year cycle they're involved. And I brought it to their attention, but I don't want to be nagging them about it. It's not my job.
Well, I'm sure they're gonna get an update because we saw that it's taking up a lot of the blight ordinance person's time and is, are they gonna have to hire, make an additional.
I mean, Kate gave an
secondary
update at the budget
effort.
hearing.
Yes,
on what the
exactly.
ordinance is doing, so it isn't
Pardon me?
like,
That's
well,
right.
Kate gave an update on the ordinance at the budget meeting.
What does budget have to do with like?
No, but she essentially
It's
gave the
what's-
update on what's happening with the blight ordinance at the budget meeting.
Okay.
So, I mean, the information's available.
Yes.
So, maybe.
To clarify, the statement was made that there's a lot more cases going on than what was anticipated. And once you get through some of the neighbor reporting to neighbor for which there is nothing going on, even with what it has taken more time than what was initially anticipated, and so hours, and therefore has a budget effect on next year's budget, which is what you were referring to, that Kate said.
No, I got my
Okay, so, we'll continue the thought, huh, Frank? And see if we can find a way to get
Why
this.
can't Planning, Zoning, and Housing ask for an update from the Blight Commission?
Because Joanne's not here.
They know they need to prepare a report, and I'm sure they will. They're working on a variety of activities, none of which have had the budget out.
Some of
None
them
of,
can't.
there have been no revenue gained from that.
I don't look
Yeah.
at
The
revenue
issue
as
is more
being
the issue is really the
manpower.
manpower going
Yeah.
into it.
They're doing a lot of good work.
Absolutely.
All right, so,
Back to your schedule.
Back to the agenda.
Oh, Seth, yeah, back to his.
all right.
Oh, nice thought.
Okay, so, let's move on to, setting the agenda for the February 25 meeting. Do the Town Hall Employees Union contract first?
Yeah.
Okay. Do the gift second? And tax deferral program third? That's it.
I'd like to add something.
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't there a carryover from our January meeting where we were gonna have Jerry Ginsburg talk about the economic development that's going on in Darien, i.e. the status of the, the Palmers and the status of the
Yeah.
Stop and Shop and the status of the Corbin Drive. So that was postponed
Alright.
because we said we had too many
That's a
people.
great
idea.
And we
Yeah.
really, I personally would really like to know what's going on.
I've actually had
Yeah.
2 requests on that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that live in the District
The black
1 and
person coming
5
in.
area where Norotan Heights is they're asking what's going on there. Because things are closing and they're not.
Okay, so the topics are
With the blight
the federal project, which is Stop and Shop,
Then Norotan Heights,
Norotan
Commerce
Commerce.
and
Right.
Corbin Drive.
And other projects that because there's maybe
Yeah.
some other ones that
Yeah.
are just
Yeah.
I'll
major
give them a
size.
start though. so-
Yeah, and just put down other major projects in town, because there's
Yeah,
quite a
because he
few
may
that they
know
may
some
want to
others.
talk about.
So I'll put 4 Ginsburg after that, right?
Good.
I mean, part of it was addressed by Cindy at the State of the Union, but,
Yeah, but this is
Yeah,
more
but
specific.
This will be more
it's like
details,
when
especially Norotan
Ed
Heights.
Gentile guy, I mean, he knows it, I mean, he's
Yeah.
baked in this stuff,
Yeah.
which is really makes.
absolutely, we're very lucky to have Jeremy.
Yeah, right.
And we
All
had an
right,
update of where
um,
buses are
one
going.
other-
So, yes,
One other
sir.
point.
We had an update on where the businesses and other.
I sent, Tara Ockman sent the board's position on a number of ordinances that are, or legislation that's being proposed in Hartford. Clara got a copy of it, Seth did and I did. I raised the issue, not that we're doing anything in the RTM to support it or blah, 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 but rather, I suggested to Seth that it would be a good idea, because there's a lot of discussion going on and fears that actually New Canaan and Darien may become one school district. That's the downside. The upside is we'll win every state championship.
Yeah, I've heard the fears that we would be merged.
So, no, it's a long probate district. So, but it has already hurt Wilton home sales because of that,
They would be merged with Norwalk.
because they're being merged, and so a couple sales stopped. So, but anyway, I'm suggesting that, what Tara, representing the board and the board's position, be distributed to all RTM members for an information purpose, just so that they know where our board stands on this legislation.
Yeah. And that's already on the table, so. we
Yeah, well,
just-
you have it, so it's
Yeah.
a matter of asking Donna to send it and
Yeah,
forward it.
sure, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's, you know, I went to the League of Women Voters thing where Bob Duff, Terry Wood, and Matt Blumenthal were there, and obviously that came up. And it was interesting listening to Bob Duff talk about it, because I don't think he quite understands how superintendents are paid.
He doesn't understand, to be quite honest,
My friends, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
A smart move.
he doesn't understand
Yeah, oh yeah,
Connecticut
wait a minute,
education.
first things first. Can I get a motion for the agenda, please?
I'd like to add for,
So, Fred.
or consider adding
Oh.
another, which is the topic of the bag ordinance, is a statement of where we are, so that people won't ask you, like you're not covering it, but make a little statement.
We don't usually talk about.
Would you like to do that?
I wouldn't.
I would.
No, I don't know.
I-
You'll be there
To
all
say,
night.
if only to say,
This is where.
we had the public hearing.
What
be a
I
recording.
could do, if you wanted, I could do under announcements, say, by the way, the Rules Committee is working with the bag ordinance
Sounds good.
folks, and we had a public hearing, thank you very much.
Sounds good.
That would be.
That's about it.
Or give them, give them.
Yeah, no, I just stick it up here under.
The email.
Agenda.
Stuff, include the email as well, so they can.
Yeah.
Contact you with ideas or something.
Thank
So they don't
you.
have to stand
Oh,
up
yeah,
and share them there.
No, it's under announcements,
This one was
so
easy.
I was
Okay,
taking
good,
questions.
okay, that's good, good.
How you doing in the house with that?
Now, can I have a motion, please, to set the agenda for the February 25
Motion to set
meeting?
the agenda
And that would be
for the February 25th.
the 25th, yes?
Yes, sir.
Are you,
I'm
oh, I see, you're just coming right
I'm right
in.
behind
Do I have a
you.
second?
Yeah, we got it.
I have your back, Seth.
All in favor? Thank you. I don't see any opposition, I don't see any abstentions, very good. Now, I would accept a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please rise.
Oh, please, right.
Yeah.